Hi everyone, welcome. I'm down here in my wormery preparing to check in on probably one of my biggest systems, if not my biggest system. It's my VermiBag Mini over here. And today they're going to be getting a little bit of an unusual assortment of different foods. As you can see, I've got some of these crazy looking pumpkins or gourds or whatever they're called. They're not the type of pumpkin that you would create a jack-o'-lantern out of, but you often see these as decoration at Halloween. And you know, when I first bought these things home, they were so vibrant in their colors. They had all kinds of colors like oranges and greens, and this one might still have a little bit of that remaining, but all the other ones have really faded considerably in their color schemes. And a lot of them, most of them are like light as a feather, almost completely dried out. And my idea was not to just place them in their hole, which is what I would normally do with unusual, interesting feedings. My idea was to see if I can maybe crumble these things and crush them and drop them in as more of like a powdery, kind of crumbled up, small particle size food if possible. So we'll see how that goes. I'm gonna slip on a glove and let's see what else. I got to get my prepared bedding. So let me get those things ready and we can get to feeding these little guys. All right, got my glove on, got the bedding all set to go. I think we're ready to get these little guys fed. In a way, pumpkin has already been a theme in this system because I had a whole bunch of pumpkin stems, some of them even really large, that all ended up down here in this system. And we kind of held off on interfering with the breakdown of those pumpkin stems. We thought that maybe it would be interesting just to let them go on their own and break down at their own pace. But I've been kind of second guessing whether I want to continue down that road or, maybe it would make good sense to start taking these big, huge pumpkin stems and helping them along a little bit because some of them are quite big. Like right here is one. Pretty good sized pumpkin stem, right? It does seem like a popular place for the worms to congregate on. I'm definitely liking the moisture content down in here. In the beginning I was starting to sense that the moisture levels in here were just not right. I always felt like I had to come back in here with my squirt bottle. On this occasion I didn't even really prepare the squirt bottle. In most of my previous check-ins here I've had the squirt bottle on the ready just in case we felt like we would need it, but on the past few check-ins we pretty much felt like we didn't need it. So we didn't add water. And it does seem like the measures we took to try to achieve a nice moisture level in here are working. We kind of wrapped plastic bubble wrap around the entire system. Then as you saw, there was just a plastic sheet resting out here on top of the material. And all those attempts at trying to help the system preserve its moisture do appear to be working. My goodness. We got ourselves a nice little worm party happening down here underneath all these pumpkin stems. Well, I did definitely unearth a few pieces of banana. And I don't remember what other sort of things we fed, but I'm assuming banana must have been one of the things they got last time. And there do seem to be a good number of worms coming out to partake in the yummy foods that they got. I believe I might have made reference to it last time too when we were in here in terms of sort of sensing a little bit of an odor or like a dampness, a musty kind of damp odor. It's not a foul odor or any sort of rotting or any sort of nasty anaerobic, just moisture, kind of the scent of moisture, which in a way in a worm bin is just fine. Nothing to be worried about as far as that goes. And this banana looks like a pretty popular spot. When I just kind of burst open the peel, it revealed a little bit leftover banana inside the peel, but also a good number of worms working the stuff down. Yum, yum. Wondering what other kinds of interesting things we're going to encounter as we make our way down into the down into the feeding zone. More stems. So this would definitely be the largest of all the stems. And then kind of late in the game, I came in here with a fairly new stem. So I kind of thought that perhaps if I did start getting into the habit of helping some of these stems along, then perhaps the biggest one, we could leave that one to just continue at its own natural pace, but then, and also maybe that the newest one that had been plopped in here most recently would probably not be softened up enough yet to be subject to that sort of treatment. Probably wouldn't break up quite yet, although I could be wrong, but I figured those two would probably be exempt from that sort of processing, if you want to consider it as that. But you know, I think we've hinted at it a few times. Maybe it would start making good sense to see if we can help some of these stems along. So I don't know if this might be the newly added one. I mean, just the way it feels like it's crushing and is pretty soft and gives to the pressure of me pressing on it kind of makes me question whether this one might not be the most newly added one. Oops. Okay, so we just managed to shatter it kind of lengthwise. Perhaps into more than just two pieces. I see a few other fragments here. Definitely interesting seeing how the worms had kind of burrowed down into the thing. So I'm assuming by breaking it apart a little bit like this, perhaps down here on the toughest portion of it, down at the base, if it'll let me, maybe I can break that up a little bit too. I mean, we've got so many in here, there's no need to keep them all around. If we want to keep one or two around as a curiosity, then we could, but perhaps it does make good sense to start helping some of these along. Not that it would necessarily be important to do so. See, like that too, just so simple to break these things. They've all softened up so much already. Got to remember that these stems came with these worms from the buckets that they used to live in prior to being all moved into here. So these stems have had quite a bit of time down in the worm bins, having an opportunity to get broken down. This was kind of a more stocky, a little bit more, I don't know, not so narrow, perhaps a more wide, thicker stem. So whatever, we've broken up a couple of them. Doesn't mean we have to go on some sort of a mad chicken, what is it? Chicken hunt? No. Goose chase. I knew some sort of a bird, right? We have to go on a wild goose chase to try to find all the stems to break them up, but perhaps in future check-ins, if we bump into stems, we can give them the same treatment, help them along a little bit, break them up a bit. But I do want to kind of keep to a little rule that I've been trying to abide by here, which is to not probe too deep down into this system. This is about as deep as we're going to want to go. And that's plenty, I think, for us to start plopping in today's feeding. So like this will definitely be one of the ones that I thought would be a good candidate to be broken up. I'm wondering if I might need my little pocket knife. There we go. See how easily these things break up? Oh, okay. I forgot that we're going to be dealing with a whole bunch of pumpkin seeds in here too. In most cases, I want to hang on to the pumpkin seeds and sort of preserve them and blend them into my worm chow. It's like if you look at my worm chow, large portion of this is pumpkin seed. But you know, I'm not going to sweat it. I'm not going to worry too much about it. This one right here too is extremely light. Presumably just as fragile, but I'm not sure. I'm almost wondering if I should go grab my, yeah, you know what? I'm going to go grab my pocket knife. While they do seem very light and fragile, they don't all necessarily feel like they're going to give quite as easily as that first one did. We might have just sort of gotten a little bit lucky on that one, that it was able to bust apart as easily as it did. I always worry a little bit like this when I feel like I'm applying perhaps a little bit, you know, large amount of force, a little large oxymoron sentence there. But I think you get the gist of what I'm saying, is that I am sort of needing to go at this with a little bit of force to be able to break it apart, and perhaps it isn't even so important that we follow through with what I envisioned. I did imagine that these things would crumble quite readily, but perhaps they're not quite ready for that. As long as we can kind of breach them and give worms access to the insides of the things, I think we'll at least give them an opportunity to dampen through and through, and not have certain sections that are sort of protected from soaking in a little bit of the moisture from the surrounding materials. So there we go. Managed to get that one busted pretty easily. This one even, it seems to have some of the meaty pumpkin fleshy portions of it that haven't dried out completely, and not too many seeds. So these, I don't even know. They're not all the same, obviously. I'm starting to wonder if we're just kind of out of space to put more of these in. Maybe I'll just keep it around here on my bench as sort of decoration for now, and we'll just use these in future feedings. Why don't we leave it at that? And for that matter, we've even got a nice additional pumpkin stem to include. I am starting to question, though, as far as putting all this dry stuff in here, whether it might be beneficial to dampen some of the surrounding materials. Because my idea was to surround these relatively dry, newly added bits of food with materials that could soak in some moisture. And I got my squirt bottle right here, so why don't we do that? I am going to get my pressurized little squirt bottle here, and maybe we'll even dampen some of these a little bit proactively. Looks like some of them are even going to kind of hold water because they're hollow and don't have holes throughout them, so maybe they'll actually form little puddles here. I'm not sure, but instead of putting in just dry paper surrounding the stuff, I thought maybe we can pretty thoroughly dampen some of this paper that we're putting in around it. And then hopefully some of the moisture that we've just put into the paper will have a chance to gradually seep into this really dry pumpkin material. And I've got my prepared bedding, but whether we really need it or not, I'm starting to question it. You know, why don't we start in with the restoration of some of the foods, you know? Maybe before we do that, let's throw in some grit. This type of food that we just added, I could certainly see being the type of food that the worms might want to have a little grit available to help break down. So we've also got to somehow fit all this old stuff back down into here too, right? All these old pumpkin stems, these banana peels, not to mention this banana right here. This banana's still got a ways to go. Luckily the worms have made themselves quite at home within the thing, and probably isn't going to last much longer based on what we're seeing there already. More banana, more pumpkin stem. I even saw some cantaloupe rind going back I don't know how long now. And I guess at this point I just have to go by sense of touch, really. If I find anything that seems like a little bit harder object, it might be a little fragment of pumpkin stem, now that we've kind of gotten into the new thing of trying to shatter them a little bit and break them apart and help them along in the breakdown process at this point, after pretty much treating them as sort of a hands-off, do not touch kind of an object. We're finally just going to start treating them just like everything else and helping them along in their composting journey. So I definitely like the way the plastic coverings and the plastic wrappings we put onto this system are working out for us. Things are staying nice and damp. Perhaps over here on this side we're seeing a little bit of dryness on the material that was right out on the surface, but otherwise everything looks quite nice. And you know, I got my worm chow. I thought perhaps the worm chow could just get sprinkled in on top of a perhaps just a little bit more bedding we can sprinkle out here on the surface. Somehow my bedding always seems to end up down at the very bottom of my feeding zones, underneath the foods that I add as almost like a foundation for the feedings. But it almost seems like every other place you go, all the other worm channels seem to use the fresh bedding as sort of a top coating, you know? So here and there I try to adapt my style to see if I can in ways mimic what other people are doing, to see if possibly there's some sort of nice little variations I can apply to my methods to see some slight improvements maybe. And you know, as long as we're over here with the squirt bottle, we might as well return all this stuff that was intended to go down into the system, down into there, using our little squirt bottle mechanism, minimizing my need for cleaning up. And it also kind of gives me a little bit of an excuse to further dampen some of that paper we just threw in there. Because, you know, with all that dry stuff going in there, it would be kind of a shame to come back in here next time and find very little, if any, progress on it. I'd really rather see some, you know, nice worm activity down there. So, not much left to do down here, other than come back in with what we had found out here on the top originally when we first arrived, which is my feeding zone indicator. Not that I really need one, especially in this system. In this system I had never ever used feeding zone indicators, but it's kind of a tradition and I figured why not, let's just start doing them here too. And it does seem pretty important to get these top covers on in such a way that we minimize the airflow that sneaks around it. So let's make sure we replace this in such a way that we do what we can to help all the material, even here at the surface, hang on to its moisture content so that it maximizes the potential places for the worms to explore. And there's a couple more things I got to do in terms of getting stuff cleaned up and put away, but I'm not going to waste your time with that because that's boring. Before I go really quick, let me just say thank you. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, as always, please don't forget to leave me a quick thumbs up before you go. That's always really appreciated. And if you haven't done so already, please also consider subscribing to the channel. That's very much appreciated as well. All right, everyone. Have a great day. Thanks so much for watching. Take care. Bye now.